"I'm dying, Mommy." Those 3 words shattered a billionaire's empire faster than any market crash ever could. When 6-year-old Ethan whispered them to his maid, not his father, the whole world stopped. What happened next wasn't in any medical textbook. It was written in blood sacrifice, and a love so fierce it defied every law of family and fortune. Before we begin, subscribe to this channel and hit that bell, because this story will break you open. Comment your city below so I can see how far Ethan's story travels. Now let's begin where most fairy tales end, at a deathbed. Your son has 3 months, maybe less. Dr. Patricia Morrison didn't sugarcoat it. She'd been doing this for 27 years, and she'd learned that rich people hated false hope more than they hated death itself. Richard Hale stood in her office like a statue made of expensive suit fabric and suppressed panic. His hands didn't shake. His voice didn't crack. But his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes that had closed billion-dollar deals without blinking, those eyes finally looked human. What are the options? Mr. Hale, we've exhausted. What are the options? Dr. Morrison pulled up the scans. Ethan's small body lit up on the screen, like a city at night, except every bright spot was a tumor. Hepatoblastoma, liver cancer in children. Stage 4. The cancer had eaten through his liver like acid through paper, spreading to his lungs, wrapping around his spine. His AB-negative blood type made him 1 in 100, beautiful and rare and impossible to save. Chemotherapy bought us 6 months instead of 3. The clinical trial in Switzerland failed. The experimental protocol from Johns Hopkins failed. Mr. Hale. Dr. Morrison took off her glasses. His liver is shutting down. The toxins are building up in his blood. Without a transplant in the next 90 days, his organs will fail one by one. First his kidneys, then his heart. He'll slip into a coma and he won't wake up. Richard's jaw clenched. Then get him a liver. He's at the top of every transplant list in the country. But pediatric donors with AB-negative blood are rare. We get maybe 3 or 4 a year in the entire Northeast. And right now there are 42 children ahead of him waiting for offer money. Excuse me. To the families, the donors, whatever they need. College funds, houses, jobs, name the price. Dr. Morrison's face hardened. That's illegal, Mr. Hale, and immoral. We don't buy organs in this country. Everything has a price. Not this. Richard turned and walked out. He didn't thank her. He didn't say goodbye. He just left because Richard Hale didn't accept failure. He fired failure. He destroyed failure. He bought his way around failure. But you can't buy your way out of death. The mansion was too quiet when he returned. Not peaceful quiet, the kind of quiet that happens when everyone's afraid to breathe too loud. The staff moved like ghosts. His assistant Margaret tried to intercept him at the door with papers, messages, decisions that needed to be made. He waved her off. "Where's Ethan?" "In his room with Amara, sir. They're reading." Of course they were. Richard climbed the grand staircase and stopped outside Ethan's door. Through the crack, he heard her voice. "Amara." And then the little dragon said, "I'm not scared of you. And do you know what the big scary monster did?" Ethan's voice weak but curious. "What?" He started to cry. Because nobody had ever been brave enough to talk to him before. He was lonely. Like Daddy. Richard's hand froze on the doorknob. "Your daddy's not lonely, sweetheart. He's just busy. He's always busy. But you're here. I'm always here." Richard pushed the door open. The room was a war zone between childhood and death. Monitors beeped. IV bags dripped. Oxygen tanks hissed. But Amara had somehow turned it into a sanctuary. Paper airplanes hung from the ceiling. Crayon drawings covered the walls. A stuffed elephant the size of a small car sat in the corner wearing a doctor's coat she'd sewn herself. Ethan lay in bed so small he barely made a dent in the mattress. His skin had that see-through quality sick children get, like he was already halfway gone. But his eyes, his mother's eyes, the only thing Richard had left of Sarah, those eyes still sparkled when he saw Amara. "Daddy?" Ethan tried to sit up. Amara helped him adjusting his oxygen tube with practiced hands. "Hey, champ." Richard crossed the room, forcing his face into something that resembled a smile. "What are we reading?" "The story about the lonely monster. Amara says everyone needs a friend." "Amara's right." Richard glanced at the maid. She was 32, but looked younger with dark skin that glowed even in the dim light, hair pulled back in a simple bun, wearing the same gray uniform she wore every day. Nothing special about her, nothing remarkable, except Ethan loved her more than he loved his own father. "Mr. Hale." Amara stood smoothing her uniform. "I can give you two some—" "No." Ethan grabbed her hand with surprising strength. "Stay." She looked at Richard. He nodded. She sat back down, and Richard saw something that made his chest tight. Her hand completely covered Ethan's, like she was trying to hold all of him together with just her touch. Richard pulled up a chair. "Ethan, I need to talk to you about something." "About the hospital." "How did you—" "I heard the doctors talking. They think I don't understand big words, but I do." Ethan's voice was matter-of-fact, the way children speak when they've accepted something adults can't. "My liver is dying. And when it dies, I die too." The words dropped like stones. Amara's hand tightened on Ethan's. "Sweetheart." "It's okay, Mommy. I'm not scared." "Mommy." Richard flinched. He'd heard Ethan call her that before hundreds of times, and he'd never corrected it because what was the point? Sarah had died in childbirth. Amara had been there since day one, feeding, bathing, rocking, singing, loving. She'd earned the title more than biology ever could. But hearing it now in this moment felt like someone had reached into his chest and squeezed. "You're not dying," Richard said, and his voice cracked for the first time in 20 years. "I won't let you. Daddy, you can't stop everything. Watch me." That night, Richard made 23 phone calls. He contacted every transplant specialist in the Northern Hemisphere. He offered to fund entire research departments. He promised donations that would make hospital boards weep with joy. He called in favors from senators, surgeons, CEOs. Nothing. No donor. No match. No miracle. At 2 a.m., he did something he swore he'd never do. He called a number a business associate had given him years ago. The kind of number you only call when you've run out of legal options. "Yeah." A man's voice rough and careful. "I need an organ." "What kind?" "Liver. Pediatric. AB negative." Silence on the other end. Then, "That's a tall order." "Money's not an issue." "It's always an issue. What we talking? 5 million. The man laughed. "For a kid's liver, try 20. And even then I can't promise quality. Could be diseased. Could be damaged. Could kill your kid faster than the cancer." Richard's stomach turned. How long would it take? To find one, maybe never. To steal one, that's murder, friend. I don't do murder. I'm not asking you to. Yeah, you are. You're asking me to kill some other kid so yours can live. That's what this is. So ask yourself, is your son worth someone else's son? Richard hung up. He sat in his study, staring at a bottle of scotch he'd been saving for Ethan's college graduation. He poured himself a glass, then another. Then he threw the bottle against the wall and watched $20,000 liquor drip down a painting he'd bought at auction without even looking at it. "Sir?" He spun around. Amara stood in the doorway, still in her uniform. "What are you doing up?" Ethan had a nightmare. He's asleep now. She stepped into the study, saw the broken glass, the ruined painting, the look on Richard's face. "Are you okay? Do I look okay?" "No, sir. You look like a father who's losing his son." Richard laughed, and it sounded like something breaking. You know what's funny? I've spent 6 years building an empire. I own 17 companies. I'm worth $4 billion. And I can't save my own child. Amara grabbed a towel and started cleaning up the glass. Money can't fix everything. Then what can... She didn't answer. Just kept cleaning her hands, moving steady and sure. Why do you do this? Richard asked suddenly. You're not his mother. You're not family. You're an employee. You could quit tomorrow, find an easier job, a life that doesn't revolve around a dying child. Why do you stay? Amara stopped. She looked up at him, and for the first time Richard saw something fierce in her eyes. Not anger. Something deeper. Something that looked like love and rage mixed together. Because I love him. You're paid to take care of him. I don't love him because you pay me, Mr. Hale. I love him because when he laughs it sounds like music. Because he shares his breakfast with the birds. Because he asks me questions about the stars and actually listens when I answer. Because when he looks at me, he doesn't see a maid. He sees his mother. Richard's throat tightened. Sarah should be here. But she's not. I am. It's not fair to you, watching him die. Love isn't about fair. Amara stood up, holding the towel full of broken glass. It's about showing up, every single day, even when your heart is breaking, especially when your heart is breaking. She walked to the door, then paused. Get some sleep, Mr. Hale. Tomorrow's his chemotherapy. He'll need you there. Amara. She turned. Thank you for loving him when I didn't know how. Her eyes filled with tears. It's not a sacrifice, sir. It's the greatest gift I've ever been given. Then she was gone, leaving Richard alone with his empire and his grief and the terrible knowledge that all his money was worth nothing at all. The next 3 weeks were a countdown to hell. Ethan got weaker. The chemotherapy that had once bought him months now barely bought him days. He stopped eating solid food. Amara would spend an hour coaxing him to take 3 bites of soup. He stopped walking without help. His legs couldn't hold him anymore. His laughter, that beautiful bubbling laugh that used to fill the mansion, became rare. Precious a sound Richard would have traded his entire fortune to hear just one more time. But Amara never stopped trying. She read to him for hours, doing all the voices making him smile, even when he was too tired to laugh. She made puppet shows with his stuffed animals. She taught him card tricks that he was too weak to perform, but loved to watch. She sang him songs from her childhood in Trinidad, her voice soft and sweet and breaking. When he was too tired to talk, she just held his hand and hummed. Richard watched from doorways, from hallways, from the shadows of his own home. He watched his son slip away, while a maid, a woman with no blood connection, no legal right, no obligation beyond a paycheck, fought to keep him tethered to life with nothing but love. And Richard realized something that shattered him completely. He'd built an empire, but Amara had built a family. The staff noticed too. Cook started leaving extra food in Amara's room. The gardener brought her fresh flowers every morning. Even Margaret, who'd worked for Richard for 12 years and never showed emotion, started tearing up whenever she saw Amara carrying Ethan downstairs so he could feel the sun on his face. But Richard's sister Victoria noticed for different reasons. She showed up one afternoon, all designer clothes and expensive perfume and judgment. Richard, we need to talk. Not now, Victoria. It's about the maid. Richard looked up from his laptop. They were in his study. Through the window, he could see Amara pushing Ethan in his wheelchair through the garden, both of them laughing at something. What about her? She's overstepping. The staff is talking. People are starting to notice how much time she spends with Ethan, how he calls her. Victoria paused, distaste on her face. That word. Mother. It's inappropriate. She's an employee, Richard. You're blurring the lines. The lines were blurred 6 years ago when Sarah died, and Amara was the one who stayed up all night with a screaming newborn while I was drowning in my own grief. The lines were blurred when she taught him to walk, to talk, to be kind. The lines don't exist anymore, Victoria. You're making a mistake. What happens when he passes? She'll expect something. Compensation. Maybe even a lawsuit. Richard stood up slowly. Get out. Excuse me. Get out of my house. Now. I'm trying to protect you. I don't need protection from the only person in this godforsaken mansion who actually loves my son more than she loves herself. Get out. Victoria left, heels clicking on marble, fury radiating off her like heat. Richard went to the window and watched Amara and Ethan. She was showing him a caterpillar she'd found, and Ethan was touching it with one trembling finger, his face full of wonder. And Richard thought, what kind of world makes a woman justify her love for a child? It was Margaret who suggested the party. A birthday party. Richard stared at his assistant like she'd lost her mind. Ethan's dying, which is exactly why he should have a party. Margaret had worked for Richard for 12 years. She rarely pushed back. But now her voice was steel. Mr. Hale, that boy, has spent the last 6 months in hospitals and laboratories. He deserves one day of joy. He's too weak to stand. Then we'll bring the joy to him. Richard wanted to argue. But what was the point? Nothing else had worked. Maybe joy was the last medicine left. Fine, do it. Margaret smiled. Already did. Amara helped. It's tomorrow. They transformed the garden into something out of a dream. Balloons everywhere, hundreds of them, red and blue and yellow and green, tied to trees floating free, catching the sunlight. A table covered with cake and cookies, and all the food Ethan couldn't eat anymore, but loved to look at. A small stage where a magician was setting up, flanked by 2 clowns in bright costumes. Music playing, not the classical stuff Richard usually insisted on, but the pop songs Ethan loved, the ones Amara danced to when she thought nobody was watching. The entire staff had gathered. Every maid, every gardener, every driver, every person who'd watched Ethan grow up. They stood in clusters, talking in hushed voices, forcing smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. Because everyone knew this wasn't really a birthday party. It was a goodbye. Richard stood on the balcony, watching the preparations, when he felt a small hand slip into his. It's beautiful. Ethan stood beside him in a superhero cape Amara had made from an old bedsheet and fabric markers. He was so thin the cape hung off him like a flag on a windless day. His oxygen tank was in a little red wagon behind him, disguised as a spaceship. But he was smiling. You like it? I love it. Is all this for me? Every bit of it. Ethan's eyes went wide with wonder. Then he threw his arms around Richard's waist, or tried to, his small arms barely reaching halfway. Thank you, Daddy. Richard knelt down, pulling his son close, feeling the bird-fragile bones, the too fast heartbeat. Anything for you, champ. Anything in the world. Even 1,000,000 balloons. Even 1,000,000,000. That's too many balloons. You're worth it. They walked down to the garden together, Richard carrying Ethan when his legs got too tired, which was almost immediately. The crowd parted. The magician started his show, pulling rabbits and doves from hats while Ethan clapped with delight. The clowns juggled and tumbled and made balloon animals that popped and made everyone laugh. Music played. Cake was cut. For one golden afternoon, the mansion filled with laughter instead of grief. Ethan sat in a special chair, Amara beside him, watching everything with enormous eyes. He clapped at the tricks. He laughed at the jokes. He ate 3 whole bites of cake, which Amara praised like he'd climbed a mountain. And then, right in the middle of it all, Ethan turned to her. She was adjusting his oxygen tube, making sure his cape stayed on, doing what she always did, taking care of him without even thinking about it. Mommy. The whole garden went quiet. The magician stopped mid-trick, a dove frozen in his hands. The clowns stopped juggling. The music seemed to stutter and fade. Every single person turned to look. Yes, sweetheart. Ethan's voice was small, confused, the voice of a child asking about bedtime or what's for breakfast. But the question cut through the party like a scream. Am I going to live? Amara's face crumpled. Every adult in that garden stopped breathing. Cook dropped her plate. The gardener's eyes filled with tears. Margaret turned away, shoulders shaking. Richard stood across the garden holding a piece of cake he couldn't taste and felt his heart stop. Because Ethan wasn't asking him. He was asking her. Amara knelt down eye level with the boy she'd raised, the child she loved more than her own life. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice was steady as stone. "I don't know, my love, but I promise you, I swear to you, I will do everything I can to make sure you do." Ethan nodded, satisfied with an answer that would have destroyed anyone else. Then he hugged her, burying his face in her uniform, and whispered something only she could hear. Richard saw her stiffen, saw her close her eyes tight, saw her mouth move in what looked like a prayer or a promise, or both. When she stood up, her face had changed. Something hard and determined had settled into her features, something Richard recognized from his own mirror when he was about to make a move that would cost him everything, but might just save what mattered. She looked at him across the garden, across the balloons, and the cake, and the dying light. And Richard knew without words, without explanation, that Amara had just decided something that would change all of their lives forever. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She lay in her small room on the third floor, staring at the ceiling, replaying Ethan's question over and over. Am I going to live? She'd been working for the Hales for 6 years. She'd come to America from Trinidad with nothing but a work visa and a dream of sending money home to her mother and 3 younger sisters. The Hale Mansion job had been a miracle, good pay, room and board, a kind employer who never yelled. And then Sarah had died, and Richard had handed her a screaming newborn, and everything had changed. Amara had never planned to love Ethan. You weren't supposed to love the children you cared for. That was the first rule they taught you in domestic work. Keep boundaries, stay professional, don't get attached. But Ethan had looked at her with those huge eyes, and he'd grabbed her finger with his tiny hand, and something in her chest had cracked wide open. Now he was dying. And she'd made him a promise. Amara got out of bed. She pulled on her robe and grabbed her phone. The house was dark and silent. Everyone else was asleep. She went to the kitchen, made herself tea. She didn't drink, and opened her laptop. She typed liver transplant donor requirements. The search results loaded. She read for an hour, clicking through medical websites, donor registries, hospital protocols. Living liver donation. You could give part of your liver to someone else. The liver regenerated. Both people could survive. Requirements. Blood type match, good health between 18 to 60 years old, no major medical conditions. She clicked another link, AB negative blood type compatibility. Her heart started racing. AB negative could receive from AB negative or O negative. Amara thought about the blood drive last year. The nurse had pricked her finger and smiled. O negative, she'd said. Universal donor. You could save anyone. Anyone. Including Ethan. Amara's hands started shaking. She clicked through more pages. Read about the surgery, the risks, the recovery, the complications. Then she read the testimonials. Parents who'd given to children, siblings who'd given to siblings, strangers who'd given to strangers. I would do it again in a heartbeat. My daughter is alive because I had 2 kidneys and she needed one. They told me it was dangerous. I told them it was love. Amara closed her laptop. She thought about Ethan's question. Am I going to live? She thought about his small hand in hers, his laughter, his questions about the stars, the way he called her mommy without even thinking about it. She thought about Richard's face at the party, broken and desperate. She thought about her mother back in Trinidad, who'd taught her that love meant sacrifice. That family wasn't always blood. That sometimes the bravest thing you could do was give everything for someone else. Amara picked up her phone. It was 3 a.m. She dialed anyway. Hello, St. Catherine's Hospital. Yes, I know it's early. I'm sorry. But I need to schedule a blood test. and I need to speak to someone in the transplant department." The operator hesitated. "Ma'am, it's 3 in the morning." "I know, but this is about a liver donation for a 6-year-old boy, and he's running out of time." There was a pause. Then, "Hold, please." Amara waited, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it. Tomorrow Richard would wake up and keep trying to save his son with money and connections and power. Tomorrow the doctors would keep running tests that led nowhere. Tomorrow Ethan would wake up a little weaker, a little closer to goodbye. But tonight, right now, Amara was going to do something that money couldn't buy and power couldn't command. She was going to find out if love could be measured in blood, if a mother's heart could be split in two, if a maid from Trinidad could save a billionaire's son with nothing but her own flesh and bone. The phone clicked back on. "Transfer to the transplant coordinator," the operator said. "God bless you, ma'am." Amara closed her eyes. "He already has," she whispered. And somewhere upstairs, in a room full of machines and monitors and the quiet hiss of oxygen, Ethan slept and dreamed of balloons that never popped and capes that let you fly, and a mother whose love was stronger than death. The coordinator's voice was soft but efficient. "Ma'am, living liver donation is a complex process. We'll need to run extensive tests, blood work, imaging, psychological evaluation. It takes weeks, sometimes months." "I don't have months. He has maybe 60 days. "I understand. But we can't rush this. If you're not a suitable match, or if there are complications, then we find out fast. Please, I'm begging you." There was a long pause. Then, "Come in tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Ask for Dr. Helen Chen. I'll put a rush on your case." "Thank you. Thank you so much." Amara hung up and sat in the dark kitchen, her whole body trembling. She'd just set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. Tomorrow morning she'd walk into that hospital. They'd stick needles in her arm. They'd ask her questions. They'd try to talk her out of it. But nothing they said would change her mind. Because 6 years ago, a grieving man had handed her a newborn baby, and that baby had grabbed her finger and changed everything. Because 3 weeks ago, a dying child had asked her if he was going to live, and she'd made a promise. Because tonight, she'd realized that some promises required more than words. They required blood. She went back to her room and pulled out a small notebook she kept hidden under her mattress. Inside were letters she'd been writing to Ethan since he was born. Things she wanted him to know if she ever had to leave. If she got deported. If Richard decided he didn't need her anymore. If life took her away from him the way it took his mother. She wrote one more. "My dearest Ethan, if you're reading this, it means something went wrong. It means I tried to save you and failed. But I need you to know something. Loving you was the easiest thing I ever did. You made me a mother without ever asking permission. You gave my life meaning when I thought I was just passing through. If I don't wake up, know that every single day with you was worth it. Know that you were wanted. Know that you were loved. Know that somewhere your mommy said yes. Always, Amara." She folded the letter and put it in an envelope with Ethan's name on it. Then she hid it back under the mattress and tried to sleep. She couldn't. At 5 a.m., she got up and made breakfast like always. Scrambled eggs for Richard, who wouldn't eat them. Oatmeal with honey for Ethan, who might manage 3 spoonfuls. Coffee for the staff, who were starting to look as exhausted as she felt. At 6:30, she knocked on Richard's study door. "Come in." He was already awake, still in yesterday's clothes, surrounded by papers and empty coffee cups. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He probably hadn't. "Mr. Hale, I need the morning off." He looked up, surprised. In 6 years, Amara had never asked for time off. Never called in sick. Never missed a single day. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, sir. Just a doctor's appointment." "Are you sick?" "No, sir. Just a checkup." Richard studied her face. Amara had never been good at lying. Her mother used to say her eyes gave away every secret. But right now she kept her face calm, her voice steady. "Take the day. Margaret can watch Ethan." "Thank you, sir." She turned to leave. "Amara." She stopped. "Is there something you want to tell me?" Her heart hammered. He knew. Somehow he knew. But how could he? She'd only decided last night. She'd told no one. "No, sir. I'll be back this afternoon." She left before he could ask anything else. St. Catherine's Hospital was a 40-minute bus ride from the mansion. Amara sat by the window and watched the city wake up. She thought about calling her mother in Trinidad, but what would she say? "Hi, Mom. I'm about to give half my liver to my employer's son." Her mother would tell her not to, would remind her that she had 3 younger sisters who needed her income, would say that love was one thing but sacrifice was another. So Amara didn't call. Some decisions you had to make alone. The transplant department was on the 5th floor. Amara found Dr. Helen Chen's office at exactly 7 a.m. The doctor was younger than she expected, maybe 40, with tired eyes and capable hands. "You're the woman who called at 3 in the morning." "Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry about that." "Don't be. Sit down. Tell me about the patient." "His name is Ethan. He's 6 years old. Hepatoblastoma stage 4. AB negative blood type. He's dying." "And you are?" Amara hesitated. "I'm his caregiver, his mother, his nanny. But yes, in every way that matters, I'm his mother." Dr. Chen wrote something down. "You understand that living liver donation is major surgery, that you'll be in the hospital for at least a week, that there are risks, infection, bleeding blood clots, even death." "I understand. And you still want to proceed?" "I have to proceed." Dr. Chen leaned back in her chair. "Why?" "Because he asked me if he was going to live. And I promised him I'd do everything I could to make sure he did. This is everything. Does the family know you're here?" "No." "Does anyone know?" "No." "Ms. I'm sorry I don't have your last name." "Amara Baptiste." "Ms. Baptiste, I have to tell you that even if you're a match, even if the surgery goes perfectly, the hospital ethics board might not approve this. You're not a family member. There are protocols. Then we find a way around the protocols. It's not that simple. Nothing about love is simple, doctor, but it's still worth doing." Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood up. "Let's run the tests. See if you're even compatible. If you are, we'll deal with the ethics board. But I need you to understand something. I will do everything in my power to make sure both you and that child survive this. But I can't make promises. Medicine doesn't work that way." "I'm not asking for promises. I'm asking for a chance." They drew her blood. 17 vials, each one labeled and sent to the lab with a rush order. They did an ultrasound of her liver. They took her medical history. They asked about her family, her health, her reasons. Amara answered every question honestly, except one. She didn't tell them who Ethan's father was. She said the family wanted privacy. Dr. Chen frowned but didn't push. By noon she was done. Dr. Chen walked her to the elevator. "We'll have preliminary results in 72 hours. If your blood type matches and there are no immediate red flags, we'll do more extensive testing. But, Ms. Baptiste, start preparing yourself for the possibility that this won't work. Most potential donors get disqualified for one reason or another." "I understand." "And start thinking about how you're going to tell the family. Because if you are a match, they have a right to know before we proceed." Amara nodded and took the elevator down. She got back to the mansion at 2 p.m. Ethan was sleeping, Margaret sitting beside his bed reading a magazine. She looked up when Amara entered. "How was your appointment?" "Fine. Just routine." "He's been asking for you all morning." "I'm here now." Margaret left, and Amara sat in the chair still warm from her body. She took Ethan's hand, so small and fragile, in hers. His skin was yellowing. The jaundice was getting worse. The toxins were building up. Dr. Morrison had said his kidneys would fail first, then his heart. They were running out of time. "Hey, baby," she whispered, even though he couldn't hear her. "Mommy's working on something. Mommy's going to fix this, I promise." Ethan stirred, but didn't wake. Amara sat there until dinner, until Richard came home, until the sun set, and the monitors beeped their steady rhythm, and the mansion filled with the sound of a child struggling to breathe. The next 3 days were the longest of Amara's life. She went through her routine like always. Wake up at 5. Make breakfast. Help Ethan wash and dress. Read to him. Play games. Pretend everything was normal. But every time her phone buzzed, her heart jumped. Every time she passed a mirror, she studied her reflection, wondering if her body would be good enough, strong enough, worthy enough. On the 3rd day, Dr. Chen called. "Ms. Baptiste, can you come to the hospital today? Is something wrong?" "No, something's very, very right." Amara told Richard she had another appointment. He was getting suspicious now, she could tell. But he didn't stop her. Maybe he was too tired to ask questions. Maybe he sensed that whatever she was doing, it was important. Dr. Chen met her in the same office, but this time she was smiling. "You're a match. Perfect blood type, excellent health-compatible tissue markers. Your liver is the right size, the right structure. Ms. Baptiste, you could save this child's life." Amara's knees went weak. She sat down hard. "You're sure?" "As sure as we can be at this stage. We'll need to do more tests. Imaging, stress tests, psychological evaluation. But based on what we have now, you're the best candidate we could hope for." "When can we do the surgery?" "Not so fast. First, we need approval from the ethics board. Second, we need consent from the child's legal guardian. Third, we need to make sure you fully understand the risks. This isn't like donating blood. This is major surgery. You'll be under anesthesia for 6 to 8 hours. We'll remove 60% of your liver and transplant it into the child. Your liver will regenerate over the next few months, but during that time, you'll be vulnerable. Any infection, any complication could kill you." "I understand." "Do you? Because I need to hear you say it. I need to hear you say that you understand you might die doing this." Amara looked Dr. Chen in the eyes. "I understand that I might die, but I also understand that if I don't do this, Ethan definitely will. So yes, I understand. And yes, I'm still saying yes." Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "Okay, then here's what happens next. You need to tell the family. The father needs to consent. If he agrees, we present your case to the ethics board. If they approve, we schedule surgery immediately. Every day we wait, the child gets weaker." "How do I tell him?" "The truth, that you love his son enough to risk everything." Amara left the hospital in a daze. The bus ride home was a blur. She kept thinking about Richard's face when she told him. Would he be grateful? Angry? Would he forbid it? Could he forbid it? She got home at 4 p.m. Richard was in his study on a conference call. She waited outside the door until he finished, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Finally, he hung up. She knocked. "Come in." She stepped inside. Richard looked up from his laptop, and something in her face made him stop. "What's wrong?" "Mr. Hale, I need to tell you something." "You're quitting." "No, sir, I'm not quitting. I'm saving your son." Richard stood up slowly. "What?" "I went to St. Catherine's Hospital 3 days ago. I got tested. I'm a perfect match for Ethan. My blood type, my liver, everything. Dr. Chen says I can donate part of my liver to him, 60%. It'll regenerate in both of us. He could live." Richard stared at her like she'd started speaking another language. "You did what?" "I'm offering to be Ethan's donor, to give him my liver." "No, Mr. Hale." "Absolutely not. Are you insane? I'm the only chance he has. You could die, and he will die. In less than 60 days, your son will die, and you'll spend the rest of your life knowing you had the power to save him and didn't." Richard slammed his hand on the desk. "I'm not letting you kill yourself for my son." "Why not? You'd do it in a heartbeat." "That's different. I'm his father. And I'm his mother." Amara's voice cracked. "Maybe not by blood, but by every other measure that matters. I raised him. I loved him. I held him when he cried and taught him to tie his shoes and sang him to sleep every single night for 6 years. So don't you dare tell me I don't have the right to save him." Richard looked like she'd slapped him. "Amara, I can't let you do this. The risk is mine to take. I'm an adult. I'm of sound mind. I'm making this choice with open eyes. What about your family, your mother, your sisters? They'll understand, because they taught me that love means sacrifice." "This isn't sacrifice, it's suicide." "No, suicide is doing nothing. Suicide is watching that little boy die when I have the power to save him." Amara's voice broke, tears streaming down her face. "Please, please, Mr. Hale, let me do this. Let me save him. He asked me if he was going to live, and I promised him I'd do everything I could. This is everything." Richard turned away, his shoulders shaking. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "I can't lose both of you." "You won't lose me. Dr. Chen says the surgery has an 85% success rate for donors. 85%. Those are good odds. And the other 15% is a risk I'm willing to take." Richard turned back to her, and his face was wet. "Why? Why would you do this for a child who isn't even yours?" "Because he is mine. From the moment you put him in my arms, he was mine. And I would rather die trying to save him than live knowing I did nothing." They stood there in silence, two people from completely different worlds bound together by love for the same child. Finally, Richard spoke. "If I say yes, if I agree to this, you have to promise me something. Anything. If something goes wrong, if you don't make it, I need you to know that I will take care of your family, your mother, your sisters. They'll never want for anything. I'll make sure of it. Mr. Hale. And I need you to know that Ethan will grow up knowing what you did. He'll know that you loved him enough to give him everything. I'll make sure he never forgets you." Amara's vision blurred with tears. "Nothing's going to go wrong. I'm going to wake up, and he's going to wake up, and we're both going to live." "You can't know that." "No, but I can believe it. And right now, belief is all we have." Richard crossed the room and did something he'd never done in 6 years. He hugged her. Not a polite employer hug, but a real embrace, desperate and grateful and terrified. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair. "Thank you for loving him when I didn't know how. Thank you for being his mother when he needed one. Thank you for being willing to die for him. I'm not going to die, I'm going to live, and so is he." They pulled apart, both of them crying now, both of them holding on to hope with bloody fingernails. "What do we do next?" Richard asked. "We tell Dr. Chen you consent. Then we deal with the ethics board. Then we schedule surgery before it's too late." "How long?" "Dr. Chen wants to move fast, maybe a week, maybe less." Richard nodded. "Then let's do it. Let's save my son." But neither of them knew that the hardest part was still coming. Because 24 hours later, the hospital ethics board would reject Amara's donation, and Richard would have to make a choice that would either save his son or destroy everything they'd fought for. And Amara would have to decide how far she was willing to go, how many laws she was willing to break, how much of herself she was willing to risk, all for a child who wasn't hers by blood, but was hers by every other definition of the word. Because sometimes love isn't about permission. Sometimes it's about courage. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is give everything you have for someone who can never pay you back. The ethics board meeting was scheduled for Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Richard wore his most expensive suit, like armor. Amara wore her church dress, the nicest thing she owned. Dr. Chen met them outside the conference room with a stack of files and a worried expression. I need to prepare you both. The board is going to have concerns. Big ones. What kind of concerns? Richard asked. The primary one is coercion. They're going to question whether Ms. Baptiste is making this choice freely or if she feels pressured because you're her employer. That's ridiculous, Amara said. No one's forcing me. I know that. You know that. But the board has to protect potential donors from exploitation. And the optics here are complicated. Wealthy employer, working class employee, dying child. They're going to scrutinize every angle. Richard's jaw clenched. What do we need to do to convince them? Be honest. Be clear. And Ms. Baptiste, you need to make them understand that this is your choice and yours alone. They walked into the conference room. 6 people sat around a long table, all of them looking official and skeptical. Dr. Patricia Morrison was there, Ethan's oncologist, a hospital administrator, 2 medical ethicists, a lawyer, and someone Amara didn't recognize, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes who introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, the board chair. Thank you for coming, Dr. Okonkwo said. Please sit down. They sat. Richard reached under the table and squeezed Amara's hand once, quick and supportive, then let go. Dr. Okonkwo opened a file. We've reviewed your case. Ms. Baptiste, your test results are remarkable. You're an excellent candidate from a medical standpoint. But this board's job isn't just to evaluate medical compatibility. It's to ensure that living donation happens ethically, without coercion, and with full informed consent. So we have some questions. Of course. Amara said, her voice steadier than she felt. How long have you worked for Mr. Hale? 6 years, since Ethan was born. And in those 6 years, has Mr. Hale ever asked you to donate an organ? No, ma'am. Never. He didn't even know I was getting tested until after I did it. One of the ethicists leaned forward. But you must have known that if you were a match, it would put tremendous pressure on you to donate. Pressure to keep your job, to maintain your relationship with the family. No one pressured me. I made this decision alone. Ms. Baptiste, you earn $45,000 a year. Mr. Hale is worth $4 billion. Can you honestly say there's no power imbalance affecting your choice? The power imbalance is that his money can't save his son, but my body can. That's the only imbalance that matters. The room went quiet. Richard started to speak, but Dr. Okonkwo held up a hand. Let her finish. Amara took a breath. I know what you're thinking. Poor woman, rich boss, she doesn't have a choice. But you're wrong. I have every choice. I could walk away right now. I could quit my job, move to another state, never see Ethan again. But I won't. Not because I'm being forced. Because I'm being called. By love. By duty. By the fact that 6 years ago, a grieving man put a newborn baby in my arms, and that baby became my son, in every way except biology. But he's not your son, the lawyer said. Legally, you have no parental rights, no custody, no say in his medical care. You're an employee. Then legally, I'm an employee who loves her employer's child enough to risk her life for him. Is that illegal? No, but is it unethical to love a child you've raised since birth? Of course not, but then why are we here? Why are you questioning whether my love is real or my choice is free? If Richard Hale wanted to donate part of his liver to his son, would you be asking these questions? Or would you fast-track the surgery and call him a hero? The board exchanged glances. Dr. Morrison spoke for the first time. Ms. Baptiste, I've been treating Ethan for 8 months. I've watched you with him. I know you love him. But love and medical ethics are 2 different things. We have protocols to protect donors from making decisions they'll regret. I won't regret this. You don't know that. Organ donation changes you, physically, emotionally, psychologically. You'll carry scars for the rest of your life. You'll face complications we can't predict. And if something goes wrong, if you die on that operating table, We need to know that you made this choice with full understanding of the consequences. I understand that I might die. I've known that from the beginning. But I also understand that Ethan will definitely die if I don't do this. So yes, I made this choice with full understanding, and I'm making it again right now in front of all of you. I want to save that little boy's life. Please let me. Dr. Okonkwo studied her for a long moment. Mr. Hale, what's your position on this? Richard cleared his throat. Initially, I was against it. The thought of risking Amara's life terrified me. But she's right. This is her choice. And I've realized something in the last few days. I've spent my whole life trying to control outcomes, fix problems, buy solutions. But I can't buy this. I can't force it. I can only accept it. And I'm grateful, more grateful than I can express, that Amara is willing to do what I can't. You understand that if the surgery fails, you could lose both your son and his caregiver. Yes. And you're willing to accept that risk. I'm willing to accept whatever outcome comes from giving my son a chance to live. Because right now, he has no chance. And Amara is offering him hope. How can I say no to hope? The board deliberated quietly among themselves. Amara watched their faces, trying to read the verdict in their expressions. Dr. Morrison looked concerned. The lawyer looked skeptical. But Dr. Okonkwo's face was unreadable. Finally, she spoke. We're going to take a vote. But first, I want to say something. Ms. Baptiste, in my 20 years on this board, I've never seen a potential donor as clear-eyed and determined as you. Your love for this child is obvious. But that's exactly what worries us. Love can make us do reckless things, dangerous things, things we can't take back. Love also makes us do brave things, Amara said quietly. Necessary things, things that matter more than our own safety. Dr. Okonkwo nodded slowly. All right, let's vote. All in favor of approving Ms. Baptiste as a living liver donor for Ethan Hale. 3 hands went up. Dr. Chen, Dr. Morrison, and Dr. Okonkwo herself. All opposed. 3 hands went up. The ethicists and the lawyer. Silence fell over the room like a shroud. Tie vote, the administrator said. Protocol requires a majority to approve. So what happens now? Richard's voice was tight. The case goes to the hospital's chief of surgery for final decision. That's Dr. James Rutherford. He'll review everything and issue a ruling within 48 hours. 48 hours? Ethan doesn't have 48 hours. Mr. Hale, I understand your urgency, but we have procedures. Your procedures are killing my son. Richard stood up so fast his chair fell backward. Amara grabbed his arm, but he pulled away, his face flushed with fury and desperation. Do you know what it's like to watch your child die? To count down the days, the hours, the breaths. To know that every morning when you wake up might be the last morning he's alive. And now you're telling me that even though we have a donor, even though we have a solution, we have to wait for some bureaucrat to decide if it's ethical enough for him to live. Mr. Hale, please sit down. No, I've sat down. I've been patient. I've followed every rule, jumped through every hoop, and my son is still dying. So tell me, Dr. Okonkwo, how many children have your ethics saved, and how many have they killed? Richard, stop. Amara's voice cut through his rage. This isn't helping. He looked at her, breathing hard, and something in her calm broke through his anger. He picked up his chair and sat back down. I apologize. That was out of line. But please understand we're running out of time. We know, Dr. Okonkwo said gently. And we're trying to move as fast as we can while still protecting everyone involved. Dr. Rutherford will make his decision quickly. In the meantime, Ms. Baptiste, I strongly suggest you speak with the transplant psychologist. If Dr. Rutherford approves the donation, you'll need a psychological clearance before we can proceed. I'll do whatever you need. They left the conference room in silence. Richard looked like he wanted to punch something. Dr. Chen looked worried. Amara just felt numb. That didn't go the way we hoped, Dr. Chen said as they walked to the elevator. 3 votes yes isn't nothing, Amara said. It's also not enough. And Dr. Rutherford is a by-the-book surgeon. He's not going to approve this unless he's absolutely certain you're making a free choice. I am making a free choice. I believe you, but convincing him is going to be harder. They rode the elevator down in silence. When they reached the lobby, Richard turned to Amara. I need to make some calls. Can you get home okay? Yes, sir. Amara. He looked at her, his eyes red. Thank you. For trying. Even if this doesn't work, thank you for trying. It's going to work. We just have to be patient. But patience was a luxury they didn't have. That night, Ethan spiked a fever. By midnight, his temperature was 103. By 2 a.m., he was delirious, calling for his mother, his real mother Sarah, the one he'd never known. Amara sat beside his bed, sponging his forehead with cool water, whispering that she was here, that he was safe, that everything would be okay. But everything wasn't okay. Dr. Morrison came at dawn. She examined Ethan, checked his labs, and pulled Richard aside. Amara followed them into the hallway. His liver is failing faster than we anticipated. The infection is spreading. His kidneys are starting to shut down. How long? Richard's voice was hollow. Days. Maybe a week if we're lucky. I'm sorry. Put him on dialysis. Do whatever you have to do to buy us time. Richard, we're doing everything, but his body is giving up. Even if the ethics board approves the donation tomorrow, he might not be strong enough for surgery. Then we do it now, tonight, before he gets weaker. We can't. Not without approval. Then get me approval. I can't override the ethics board. No one can, except Dr. Rutherford, and he's not going to rush this. Richard turned and punched the wall. His knuckles split blood, smearing the white paint. Amara grabbed his hand. Stop. You're not helping him by hurting yourself. I don't know what else to do. I've tried everything. Money connections, begging, threatening. Nothing works. My son is dying and I'm powerless to stop it. You're not powerless. You said yes. That's everything. But what if yes isn't enough? Amara didn't have an answer. They went back to Ethan's room. He was sleeping now, his breathing shallow and labored. The monitors beeped faster than they should. His skin had gone from yellow to gray. Richard sat on one side of the bed. Amara sat on the other. They each held one of Ethan's hands. Tell me about the day he was born, Amara said quietly. Richard looked up surprised. Why? Because I've never heard the story, and I think we both need to remember why we're fighting. Richard was quiet for a long time. Then he started talking. Sarah went into labor 3 weeks early. I was in Tokyo closing a deal. By the time I got back, she'd been in the delivery room for 16 hours. The doctors said there were complications. Placental abruption. She was hemorrhaging. They had to choose between her and the baby. She chose him. She didn't even hesitate. She told them to save the baby and let her go. I got there just in time to hold her hand while she died. She never even got to see him. Never got to hold him. She just slipped away. And then the nurses brought me this tiny screaming thing wrapped in a blue blanket. And I didn't know what to do with him. I didn't know how to be a father. Sarah was supposed to teach me. But she was gone, and I was alone with this baby who needed me, and I had no idea how to give him what he needed. So you hired me. I hired you because I was a coward. Because I couldn't face him without seeing Sarah. Because every time I looked at him, all I saw was what I'd lost instead of what I'd gained. You were supposed to be temporary, just until I figured things out. But you were so good with him, so natural. You loved him instantly in a way I couldn't. So I let you take over. I told myself I was doing what was best for him. But really, I was just doing what was easiest for me. You're not a coward. You're just a man who lost his wife. I'm a coward who let his employee raise his son because he was too broken to do it himself. Richard. Amara waited until he looked at her. You gave me the greatest gift of my life. You gave me him. Do you understand I came to America with nothing? No family, no future, no purpose. And then you put this perfect, beautiful baby in my arms, and suddenly I had everything. You didn't steal anything from me. You gave me a reason to exist." Richard's eyes filled with tears. "He loves you more than he loves me." "That's not true." "It is. And it should hurt, but it doesn't. Because I know you love him the way Sarah would have. You've been the mother he needed. And I've been grateful every single day, even if I never said it." They sat in silence, holding Ethan's hands, watching him breathe. "We can't lose him," Richard whispered. "We won't. I won't let that happen." But even as she said it, Amara felt doubt creeping in. What if the ethics board said no? What if Dr. Rutherford rejected her? What if all her love and determination and sacrifice meant nothing in the face of hospital politics and legal liability? She thought about the letter hidden under her mattress, the one she'd written in case she didn't wake up. Maybe she needed to write a different letter, one that explained what she was about to do if the hospital refused, because Amara had made a promise to a dying child. And she was going to keep that promise, even if it meant breaking every rule, defying every authority, and risking everything she had. The next morning, Dr. Chen called with news. "Dr. Rutherford wants to meet with you. Today, 2 p.m. Come alone." What does that mean? It means he's taking this seriously. It could go either way. Amara arrived at Dr. Rutherford's office at exactly 2 p.m. He was older than she expected, maybe 60, with white hair and surgeon's hands. His office was filled with diplomas and certificates and photos of successful transplants, smiling patients, holding up signs that said, "Thank you for my second chance." "Ms. Baptiste, sit down." She sat. "I've read your file. I've reviewed your test results. I've spoken with Dr. Chen and Dr. Morrison and every member of the ethics board. And I have to tell you, I've never seen a case quite like this." Is that good or bad? It's complicated. On one hand, you're an excellent candidate medically. Your liver is perfect for that child. On the other hand, the ethics are murky. You're an employee. There's an inherent power dynamic. And while I believe you when you say you're making a free choice, I have to consider how this will look. If something goes wrong, if you die or have complications, the hospital could be accused of allowing exploitation. So you're saying no. I'm saying I'm conflicted. Help me understand something. Why you? Why not wait for a deceased donor? Why not give the system more time? Because Ethan doesn't have more time. And because I'm here, I'm willing, and I'm a match. Why would I wait for someone else to die when I can save him right now? Because the risk. I know the risk. Everyone keeps telling me about the risk, but no one seems to understand that I've already made peace with it. If I die saving that child, I die happy. But if I don't try and he dies, I'll spend the rest of my life knowing I could have saved him and didn't. That's a risk I can't live with. Dr. Rutherford leaned back in his chair. You really love him. More than my own life. Even though he's not yours. He is mine. Maybe not on paper, but in every way that actually matters, he's mine. Dr. Rutherford was quiet for a long time. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out a form. This is the consent form for living liver donation. If I approve this, you'll sign here, and we'll schedule surgery for Monday morning. That's 3 days from now. In those 3 days, you can change your mind at any time. No one will judge you. No one will pressure you. You can walk away, and that child will go back on the transplant list and hope for a miracle. I'm not going to change my mind. Maybe not. But I need to know you have the option. I need to know that every single moment up until they put you under anesthesia, you have the freedom to choose. I understand. Do you? Because once you sign this, things move fast. Pre-op testing, imaging, blood work. We'll schedule both surgeries simultaneously, you in one or Ethan in another. Dr. Chen will remove 60% of your liver. I'll transplant it into Ethan. If everything goes perfectly, you'll both wake up and recover. But if something goes wrong, you could die, and he could die, and we'll have lost 2 people instead of 1. I'm not afraid. Maybe you should be. Fear is what keeps us safe. Fear is also what keeps us from doing brave things. Dr. Rutherford smiled slightly. You remind me of someone, my wife. She was a nurse. 20 years ago, she donated a kidney to a patient she'd never met. Just walked into my office one day and said she'd been matched through a registry and she was doing it. I tried to talk her out of it, told her all the risks. She said the same thing you're saying now, that some things are worth the risk. She had the surgery. Both she and the recipient survived. And you know what? She never regretted it. Not for 1 second. She said it was the most meaningful thing she'd ever done. So you'll approve the surgery? Dr. Rutherford picked up his pen. I'm going to do something I probably shouldn't. I'm going to trust that you know your own heart. And I'm going to approve this donation. But I need something from you in return. Anything. I need you to promise me that if at any point, and I mean any point, you have doubts, you'll speak up. Promise me you won't go through with this just because you feel obligated or because you're afraid of disappointing people. I promise. But I won't have doubts. This is the surest thing I've ever done. He signed the form and slid it across the desk. Then welcome to the craziest, bravest, most terrifying decision of your life. Amara signed without hesitation. Surgery is Monday at 6 a.m. Don't eat or drink anything after midnight Sunday. Bring someone to drive you home afterward, though you'll be staying in the hospital for at least 5 days. What do I tell Ethan? The truth. That you're giving him a piece of yourself so he can live. Amara left Dr. Rutherford's office in a daze. She called Richard from the parking lot. It's approved. Monday morning, 6 a.m. She heard him make a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Oh my God. Oh my God, Amara. Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure? I've never been more sure of anything. What do we do now? Now we tell Ethan he's going to live. They told Ethan that evening. Richard wanted to wait, wanted to plan the perfect words, but Amara said no. She said children deserved the truth as soon as possible, especially when the truth was hope. Ethan was awake, but barely. His fever had broken, but his skin was still that terrible gray color, and his breathing sounded like paper tearing. He looked at them with eyes too old for his face. Am I dying today? Richard's breath caught. Amara sat on the edge of the bed and took Ethan's hand. No, baby. You're not dying today, or tomorrow, or any day soon. Because Monday morning we're going to fix you. How? You know how your liver is sick. The doctors said it's broken. Right. Well, livers are special. They can grow back. So Monday, the doctors are going to give you part of a new liver, and your body is going to make it grow into a whole liver. And then you'll get better. Ethan's eyes widened. Where will they get a new liver? Amara smiled, though tears were sliding down her cheeks. From me. I'm going to give you part of mine. Ethan stared at her, then at Richard, then back at her. You can do that. I can, and I am. But won't you need it? I'll still have part of mine. It'll grow back too. We'll both be fine. But what if something bad happens? Nothing bad is going to happen. Mommy, you can't promise that. Amara's throat tightened. You're right. I can't promise nothing bad will happen. But I can promise that I love you enough to try, and I can promise that Monday morning we're going to fight together. You and me, like we've always done. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said in a voice so small it almost broke her, Will it hurt? You'll be asleep. You won't feel anything. What about you? I'll be asleep too. And then we'll both wake up. Yes, we'll both wake up and you'll get better, and we'll go home and everything will be okay. Ethan looked at his father. Daddy, is this real? Richard knelt beside the bed. It's real, champ. Amara is going to save your life. Why? Because she loves you. But it's scary. The bravest things always are. Ethan turned back to Amara. If you give me part of you, does that mean we'll be related, like real family? Amara's vision blurred. We're already real family, baby. This just makes it official. Ethan smiled for the first time in days. Okay, then let's do it. Let's fix me." He fell asleep, holding both their hands. Amara stayed until his breathing evened out, until the monitors settled into their steady rhythm, until she was sure he was resting peacefully. Then she went to her room and cried until she couldn't breathe. The next 2 days blurred together. Pre-op testing, imaging, blood work, psychological evaluation. The psychologist asked her the same questions everyone else had asked. Was she sure? Did she understand the risks? Was anyone pressuring her? Amara answered each question with the same steady calm. Yes, she was sure. Yes, she understood. No, no one was pressuring her. "You seem very resolved," the psychologist said. "Because I am. Most donors show more anxiety, more doubt. Maybe they're donating to strangers. I'm donating to my son. But he's not your son, legally. Legally, he's my employer's son. Actually, he's mine. There's a difference." The psychologist signed the clearance form. Saturday morning, Amara called her mother in Trinidad. She'd been putting it off, but she couldn't go into surgery without saying something. "Baby girl, I wasn't expecting to hear from you today." "Hi, Mama. How are you? How are the girls?" "Everyone's good. Busy. Your sister Marie got accepted to nursing school. She's so excited." "That's wonderful. Tell her I'm proud of her." "I will. Is everything okay? You sound strange." Amara closed her eyes. "Mama, I need to tell you something. And I need you to listen without interrupting. You're scaring me. I'm fine. But Monday I'm having surgery. I'm donating part of my liver to Ethan, the little boy I take care of. He's dying and I can save him, so I'm going to." Silence on the other end. Then, "You're doing what?" "I'm giving him part of my liver. It's safe, Mama. The doctors say." "Safe. You're cutting yourself open for someone else's child, and you're telling me it's safe." "He's not someone else's child. He's mine." "Amara Marie Baptiste, have you lost your mind? That boy has a father, a rich father who can pay for any treatment. Money can't buy a liver, Mama. Only love can give one. Don't you dare quote scriptures at me. This is insane. You could die. I could also live, and so could he. What about your sisters? What about me? What if something happens to you? Then you'll know I died doing something that mattered. Mama, please, I need you to understand. This child is everything to me. I've raised him since he was born. I've loved him every single day, and now he's dying and I have the power to save him. How can I not try?" Her mother was crying now. Amara could hear it in her breathing. "Because I can't lose you. You're my firstborn, my strong one. If something happens to you, nothing will happen. I'll be fine. We'll both be fine. You can't know that. No. But I believe it. The way you taught me to believe that God puts us where we're needed. Well, I'm needed here, Mama. By this little boy who calls me Mommy and doesn't understand why his body is betraying him. I'm needed, and I can help, so I have to." Her mother was quiet for a long time. Then she said in a voice thick with tears and resignation, "You're just like your grandmother. She once gave her last dollar to a stranger at the market because he looked hungry. I told her we needed that money for food. She said love was food. I didn't understand it then. I'm not sure I understand it now, but I see where you get it from. So you're not angry?" "Oh, I'm furious, but I'm also proud. Terrified, but proud." She paused. "When is the surgery?" "Monday morning, 6 a.m. Then I'll be praying from midnight until you call me and tell me you're alive. You hear me? You better call me." "I will, Mama. I promise." "And Amara, tell that little boy he better take good care of my daughter's liver. Tell him it comes from strong women who don't quit." Amara laughed through her tears. "I'll tell him." Sunday was the longest day. No food or drink after midnight, which meant she had to stop eating by 11 p.m. Saturday. By Sunday afternoon, she was so hungry she felt lightheaded, but it was also a welcome distraction from the fear that was starting to creep in around the edges of her resolve. What if something went wrong? What if she didn't wake up? What if her liver failed in Ethan's body? What if she'd promised something she couldn't deliver? She pushed the thoughts away and focused on preparation. She packed a bag for the hospital. Comfortable clothes, her mother's rosary, a photo of Ethan from his 3rd birthday. She wrote letters to her sisters just in case. She updated her will, which was really just a single page saying her savings should go to her family. Then she pulled out the letter she'd written to Ethan and read it again. The one that said if she didn't wake up, he should know he was loved. She folded it carefully and put it in an envelope with his name on it. She gave it to Margaret. "What's this?" "Just something for Ethan. If anything happens to me tomorrow." Margaret's face went pale. "Nothing's going to happen to you." "Probably not, but just in case." "Amara, you don't have to do this. It's not too late to back out." "Yes, it is. It's been too late since the moment I decided to love that child." That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the mansion settle around her. At 2 a.m., she heard footsteps in the hallway. Then a soft knock on her door. "Come in." Richard opened the door. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. Probably because he hadn't. "I can't stop thinking about tomorrow." "Me neither." "What if I'm making a mistake? What if I'm letting you do something that gets you killed?" "You're not letting me do anything. I'm choosing this." "But I could stop it. I could call the hospital right now and cancel everything." Amara sat up. "And then what? Ethan dies in a week, and I spend the rest of my life knowing I could have saved him. Is that what you want?" "No, but I don't want to lose you either." "You're not going to lose me. You can't promise that." "No. But I can promise that if something does go wrong, it wasn't your fault. It was my choice, my risk, my love. You don't get to carry that guilt." Richard sat on the edge of her bed, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked completely human. Not a billionaire, not a CEO, just a father terrified of losing the people he loved. "I should have been a better father. I should have loved him the way you do." "You love him in your own way." "It's not enough." "It's more than you think. Richard, he knows you love him. He sees you trying. That matters. But you're the one he runs to. You're the one he trusts. Because I was there. But you're here now, and tomorrow when we both wake up, you're going to have a second chance to be the father he needs. Don't waste it." Richard nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Then he did something unexpected. He hugged her. Not a polite hug, not a grateful employer hug, but a desperate embrace that said everything words couldn't. "Thank you," he whispered. "For everything. For loving him. For saving him. For being the person I couldn't be." "You're going to be that person, starting tomorrow." He left, and Amara lay back down. This time she slept. Monday morning came too fast. Amara woke at 4 a.m. to her alarm. She showered, dressed in comfortable clothes, and went downstairs. The entire staff was awake, gathered in the kitchen. Cook had made coffee, even though Amara couldn't drink it. The gardener had brought flowers. Margaret was crying. "You all didn't have to get up." "Of course we did," Cook said. "Your family. We're all praying for you," the gardener added. Margaret handed her a card. Everyone signed it, even the night staff. Amara opened it. Inside were dozens of signatures and messages. "You're a hero. Come back safe. We love you. Ethan is lucky to have you." She couldn't speak, could only nod and hug each of them in turn. Richard came down at 4:30. He was dressed in clean clothes, but he looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "Ready. Ready." They drove to the hospital in silence. The city was still, dark streetlights reflecting off empty roads. Amara watched the buildings pass and thought about all the people sleeping inside them, safe and warm and unaware that somewhere a maid and a billionaire's son were about to bet their lives on love. The hospital was quiet when they arrived. A nurse met them at the entrance and led them to the pre-op area. 2 beds side by side, separated by a curtain. Ethan was already there, groggy, but awake. "Mommy!" Amara went to him immediately. "Hey, baby, how are you feeling?" "Sleepy. They gave me medicine." That's good. That means you won't be scared. Are you scared? A little, but mostly excited, because today we fix you. Ethan reached for her hand. Promise we'll both wake up. Amara's heart cracked. I promise we'll both try our hardest. That's good enough. Dr. Chen appeared already in scrubs. How are my two patients? Ready, Amara said. Good. We're going to take you back in about 20 minutes. Mr. Hale, you can stay until then. Richard sat between the two beds holding his son's hand on one side and Amara's on the other. They stayed like that, connected until the nurses came to take them away. Wait, Ethan said suddenly. Mommy, I want to tell you something. What is it, baby? When I wake up, I want cake, chocolate cake, with strawberries. Amara laughed, tears streaming down her face. Then that's exactly what you'll get. Promise? I promise. They wheeled Ethan away first. He waved until he disappeared around the corner. Then it was Amara's turn. I'll be right here when you wake up, Richard said. Both of you. Take care of him. No matter what happens to me, take care of him. I will. But you're going to wake up, and you're going to take care of him yourself. The nurse started pushing her bed. The last thing Amara saw before they turned the corner was Richard standing alone in the pre-op area, his hand raised in a wave, his face wet with tears. The operating room was bright and cold. People moved around her with practiced efficiency. Dr. Chen appeared above her, masked but smiling with her eyes. Last chance to change your mind. Not a chance. That's what I thought. Okay, Amara, count backward from 10 for me. 10, 9, 8. Amara thought about Ethan's face, his laugh, his questions about stars. 7, 6, 5. She thought about her mother's voice, her sisters, her grandmother, who gave her last dollar to a stranger. 4, 3. She thought about love and sacrifice and how some promises required everything. 2. She never said one. The world went dark, and somewhere in another operating room, doctors. Rutherford was making the first incision in a 6-year-old boy's abdomen and in a waiting room. Richard Hale was praying for the first time since his wife died, and in Trinidad, a woman named Baptiste was on her knees asking God to protect her daughter, and in that moment, the whole world narrowed to 2 operating tables and 2 beating hearts, and the wild, impossible hope that love could be measured in organs and blood. 6 hours later, Dr. Chen emerged from the OR. Her scrubs were stained, her mask was down, and her face was unreadable. Richard stood up so fast he knocked over his chair. How are they? Dr. Chen pulled off her surgical cap. The surgery was successful. We removed 60% of Amara's liver without complications. Her vitals are stable. She's in recovery now. And Ethan? Dr. Rutherford is still working. The transplant is going well, but it's complicated. Another hour, maybe 2. But Amara's okay. She's really okay. She's alive and stable. The next 24 hours are critical. We'll be monitoring for infection, rejection, bleeding. But so far, she's doing everything right. Richard sat down hard. Can I see her? Not yet. She's still under anesthesia, but soon. Dr. Chen left, and Richard was alone again, with his thoughts and his fears and the terrible waiting. He called Margaret and told her the news. He called Amara's mother and heard her sob with relief. He called his sister Victoria, who'd been calling nonstop since Friday, and told her everything was fine, and to please stop asking if he'd lost his mind. Then he sat in the waiting room and prayed some more. 2 hours later, Dr. Rutherford appeared. His scrubs were even more stained than Dr. Chen's, but he was smiling. Ethan's out of surgery. The transplant went perfectly. The new liver is functioning immediately. I've never seen such a good match. It's like his body was waiting for it. Richard couldn't speak, could only nod and cry, and try to breathe through the overwhelming relief. He's going to need immunosuppressants for the rest of his life. And we'll have to monitor him closely for the next few months. But barring any complications, your son is going to live, Mr. Hale. He's going to grow up. He's going to have a future. When can I see him? Give us another hour to get him stable. Then you can sit with him while he wakes up." Richard waited, and waited, and finally a nurse came to get him. Ethan was in the ICU, surrounded by more machines than before, but his color was already better. That terrible gray was fading, replaced by something that looked like life. Richard sat beside his son's bed and took his hand. "Hey, champ, you did it. You're going to be okay." Ethan didn't respond, was still too deep under anesthesia. But Richard kept talking anyway. "Amara's okay too. She's in recovery. As soon as you both wake up, we're going to have chocolate cake with strawberries. And then we're going to go home. And then we're going to have the best life, the three of us. I'm going to be better. I promise. I'm going to be the father you deserve, starting right now." Ethan slept, and Richard stayed. And somewhere 2 floors up, Amara was beginning to wake, her body heavy with anesthesia and pain, but her heart light with the knowledge that she'd done it. She'd kept her promise. She'd saved him. Her eyes fluttered open. A nurse leaned over her. "Welcome back. How are you feeling?" "Ethan?" Amara whispered. "How's Ethan?" The nurse smiled. "He's perfect. The surgery was a complete success. You saved his life." And Amara closed her eyes and cried, because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is give everything for someone who can never pay you back. And sometimes love isn't about biology or legal documents or who signs the checks. And sometimes a maid from Trinidad becomes a hero. Not because she wanted recognition, but because she understood that family is made in the heart, not the blood. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give is simply showing up and saying yes when everyone else has already said no. Amara woke fully 3 hours later. The pain hit her like a truck radiating from her abdomen in waves that made her gasp. But underneath the pain was something else. Relief. Joy. The bone-deep knowledge that she'd done it. "Easy," the nurse said, adjusting her morphine drip. "Don't try to move too much. You just had major surgery." "Ethan. I need to see Ethan. He's still in the ICU, but he's doing beautifully. His father's with him now." "When can I see him?" "Maybe tomorrow. You need to rest first. Let your body heal." But Amara couldn't rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ethan's face, asking if they'd both wake up. She needed to see him. Needed to know with her own eyes that he was alive. "Please," she whispered. "Please, I just need to see him for 1 minute." The nurse hesitated. "Let me talk to Dr. Chen." 20 minutes later, they wheeled Amara's bed to the ICU. It hurt so much she thought she might pass out, but she gritted her teeth and stayed conscious. They positioned her bed next to Ethan's. He was sleeping, but he looked different already. The gray was gone. His breathing was easier. The monitors showed strong, steady numbers, and his hand when she touched it was warm. "Hey, baby," she whispered. "Mommy's here. We did it. We both woke up." Ethan's eyes fluttered open. He looked at her, confused at first, then smiling. "Mommy, you're okay." "I'm okay. Are you okay?" "My tummy hurts." "Mine too. But we're alive. We're both alive." "Does that mean I get cake now?" Amara laughed, which hurt so much she gasped, but she didn't care. "Yes. As soon as the doctors say it's okay, you get all the cake you want." Richard appeared in the doorway. When he saw them together, both awake, both smiling, despite the pain, something in his face broke open. "You're awake." "We both are," Amara said. "Daddy, guess what? Mommy gave me part of her liver, and now we're really related." "I know, champ. Pretty amazing, right?" "The most amazing thing ever." They stayed like that for an hour, the three of them in the ICU, surrounded by machines and monitors, but feeling more like a family than they ever had before. Then the nurses insisted Amara go back to her room. Her body needed rest, needed time to heal. "I'll come see you tomorrow," Ethan promised. "I'll be waiting." The next 2 days were hard. The pain was worse than Amara had imagined. Every breath hurt. Every movement felt like her abdomen was tearing open. The nurses gave her morphine, but it only took the edge off. She spent most of her time sleeping and trying not to cry. But every time a nurse came with an update on Ethan, she felt stronger. His new liver was working perfectly. His blood tests were improving. His color was coming back. He was eating small amounts. He was asking for her constantly. On the third day, Dr. Chen came to check on her. "How's the pain?" "Manageable." "That's a lie, but I appreciate the effort. Your incision looks good. No signs of infection. Your liver function is excellent. You're healing faster than expected." "When can I see Ethan?" "Today, actually. We're moving you both to the same recovery room. Figured you'd heal better together." They moved her that afternoon. The recovery room was bigger than the ICU, with 2 beds and a window that looked out over the city. Ethan was already there, sitting up in bed coloring a picture. "Mommy!" He tried to get up, but Richard stopped him. "Careful, champ. You're still healing." "But Mommy's here." "I am," Amara said, as the nurses positioned her bed next to his. "And I'm not going anywhere." Ethan reached across the gap between their beds and grabbed her hand. "Does your tummy hurt?" "A little." "Does yours?" "A lot. But the nurse said that means I'm getting better." She's right. Pain means we're healing. They spent the next 3 days in that room together. Richard barely left, sleeping in a chair between their beds, bringing them magazines and books, and terrible hospital coffee that Amara pretended to enjoy. Margaret visited with cards from the staff. Cook brought homemade soup she'd convinced the nurses to allow. Even the gardener came bringing flowers he'd grown himself. But the most surprising visitor was Victoria. Richard's sister arrived on day 5, carrying an enormous teddy bear and looking uncomfortable. "I wanted to apologize," she said to Amara, "for what I said before, about boundaries and lawsuits and inappropriate relationships. I was wrong. What you did was the most selfless thing I've ever seen." "Thank you. And I want you to know that I spoke to the family lawyers. We're drafting papers to give you legal guardianship of Ethan, co-parent status. So this never has to be a question again. You're his mother. It should be official." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "I don't need papers to be his mother." "Maybe not, but you deserve them anyway." Victoria left, and Amara looked at Richard. "You don't have to do that." "Yes, I do. Because she's right. You're his mother. You should have the legal rights to prove it." On day 6, Ethan was cleared to eat solid food. Richard went down to the cafeteria and bought the biggest slice of chocolate cake they had. It came with strawberries on the side. Ethan's eyes went wide. "You remembered." "Of course I remembered. You made Amara promise." They split the cake 3 ways. Ethan ate 4 bites before getting tired. Amara managed 2. But it was the best cake any of them had ever tasted because it meant they'd kept their promise. They'd both woken up. They'd both survived. On day 7, they were released from the hospital. The press was waiting outside, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. Someone had leaked the story. The billionaire's maid, who donated her liver to save his dying son. It was everywhere. News channels, social media front pages. Richard's security team formed a barrier, but the questions still came through. "Ms. Baptiste, how does it feel to be a hero? Were you pressured to donate? Mr. Hale, are you planning to marry her? Is this a publicity stunt?" Richard stopped. Amara grabbed his arm. "Don't. They're not worth it." But Richard pulled away and faced the cameras. "I'm going to say this once. Amara Baptiste is not a hero because of what she did. She's a hero because of who she is. She's the woman who raised my son when I was too broken to do it myself. She's the woman who loved him without conditions, without expectations, without asking for anything in return. She's the woman who literally gave him life twice. Once when she cared for him as a baby, and once when she gave him part of her body so he could live. If you want a story, that's the story. Not that a maid donated to a billionaire's son, but that a mother saved her child. That's what happened here. A mother saved her child. Now leave us alone." They got in the car. Ethan was between them, small and fragile, but alive. So alive. Amara held his hand the whole way home. The mansion looked different when they pulled up. The staff had decorated it with balloons and banners that said, "Welcome home," and "You did it," and "Love always wins." Everyone was crying. Even the gardener, tough old man who never showed emotion, had tears streaming down his face. They helped Ethan and Amara inside. Both of them were still weak, still healing. Dr. Chen had given strict orders: no lifting, no strenuous activity, lots of rest. But being home felt like the best medicine. That night, Richard helped Ethan into bed. His old bed, the one surrounded by medical equipment that was now mostly gone. They'd kept the paper airplanes on the ceiling, the crayon drawings on the walls, the stuffed elephant in the corner. "Daddy." "Yeah, champ." "Is Mommy going to stay?" "What do you mean? Is she going to keep living here? Or does she have to go away now that I'm better?" Richard sat on the edge of the bed. "Where did you get that idea?" "I heard the nurses talking. They said once people get better, the helpers go to help other people." "Ethan, listen to me. Amara isn't going anywhere. She's not your helper. She's your mother, and mothers don't leave. Promise. I promise. She's part of this family now. Forever." "Good, because I love her." "I know, so do I." Ethan's eyes went wide. "Really?" Richard paused. He hadn't meant to say that out loud. But now that he had, he realized it was true. Somewhere in the last 6 years, somewhere between watching her sing lullabies and make puppet shows and literally cut herself open to save his son, he'd fallen in love with her. Not because she was beautiful, though she was. Not because she was kind, though she was that too. But because she was real. She was present. She loved his son the way he'd always wished he could. "Really?" Richard said quietly. "But don't tell her yet. I need to figure out how to say it right. You should give her flowers. And chocolate. Mommy likes chocolate." Richard laughed. "Good advice. Now sleep. You need to heal." "You too, Daddy. You look tired." Richard was tired. Bone tired. Soul tired. But for the first time in 8 months, he was also hopeful. Amara was in her room trying to change into pajamas without pulling her stitches. Every movement hurt. She'd gotten her shirt off, but couldn't lift her arms high enough to put on the new one. Someone knocked. "Come in." Richard opened the door, then froze. "I'm sorry. I'll come back." "It's fine. I just can't get this shirt on. Could you help?" Richard crossed the room. He helped her guide her arms through the sleeves, careful not to touch her bandages. She smelled like hospital soap, and something underneath that was just her. "Thank you." "How's the pain?" "Worse at night, but I'll manage." "Dr. Chen said you're healing remarkably well, faster than any patient she's seen." "I'm motivated. I want to get back to taking care of Ethan." "Amara." Richard sat on the chair by her bed. "You don't have to take care of him anymore, not like before." Her face fell. "What do you mean?" "I mean you don't have to be his maid, or his nanny, or his caregiver. I want to make you something more." "What?" Richard pulled out an envelope. Inside were legal documents. Co-parent status, equal guardianship, your name on his birth certificate as his mother. And if you want, adoption papers, to make it official in every possible way. Amara stared at the papers. "Richard, I don't understand." "I'm saying I want you to be his mother. Legally, officially, not as my employee, as his parent, equal to me in every way." "But I'm a maid." "You're not a maid. You've never been a maid. You've been his mother from day one, and I've been too stupid and too broken to acknowledge it. But I'm acknowledging it now. You're his mother. And if you want to keep living here, not as staff, but as family, we'll make that happen. If you want your own house nearby, we'll make that happen too. Whatever you want. Whatever makes you comfortable. But I need you to know that you're not an employee anymore. You're family." Amara's hands shook as she held the papers. "What about your sister? What about society? What will people say?" "I don't care what people say. Let them talk. Let them judge. I'm done living my life according to other people's rules. The only rule that matters is this: Ethan needs his mother, and you're his mother. Everything else is just noise." "Richard, I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Say you'll stay. Say you'll be his mother officially. Say you'll let us be a real family." Amara looked at the papers, at the man sitting in her room, at the life he was offering. It was everything she'd never let herself dream about. Everything she'd thought was impossible. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to all of it." Richard smiled, and it was the first real smile she'd seen from him in months. "Good, because Ethan asked me if you were going to leave, and I promised him you wouldn't. I'd hate to break that promise. I'm not going anywhere." "Good, because neither are we." He stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Amara, thank you. Not just for saving his life, but for showing me what it means to really love someone. You taught me how to be a father, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve that gift." Then he was gone, and Amara was alone with her pain and her joy and the legal documents that said she was a mother. The next 6 weeks were a blur of recovery. Amara's body healed slowly, her liver regenerating the way the doctors promised. Ethan's new liver functioned perfectly, his body accepting the gift without rejection. They went to follow-up appointments together, took their medications together, healed together. Richard kept his promise. He was home more. He played with Ethan. He learned to read bedtime stories with all the voices. He taught himself to make pancakes, though they were always slightly burned. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying. And that was enough. The adoption papers were finalized 6 weeks after surgery. Amara Marie Baptiste became Amara Marie Baptiste Hale, legal mother to Ethan James Hale. They celebrated with chocolate cake and strawberries, and Ethan insisted everyone wear party hats. The media attention didn't die down. If anything, it got worse. They were invited to talk shows, news programs, documentary crews. Everyone wanted to tell their story. But Richard and Amara said no to everything. This wasn't a story for the world. This was their life, their family, their private miracle. But one thing did change. The hospital updated its donor policies. They created new guidelines for non-relative donors. They streamlined the ethics approval process. They made it easier for people like Amara to save people like Ethan. Dr. Chen called it the Baptiste Protocol. "You changed medicine," she told Amara at a follow-up appointment. "You proved that family isn't about blood, it's about love, and now other people will be able to do what you did." "Good," Amara said. "No child should die waiting for permission to be saved." 3 months after surgery, Ethan was cleared to go back to school. Not the fancy private school Richard had enrolled him in, but a regular neighborhood school where he could be a normal kid. He was nervous the first day, clutching both Amara's and Richard's hands as they walked him to the door. "What if the other kids ask about my scar?" "Then you tell them the truth," Amara said. "That your mommy gave you part of her liver, and now you're both superheroes." "Are we really superheroes?" "The realest kind, the kind that love each other." Ethan ran inside his backpack, too big for his small frame, but his smile bigger than it had been in months. Amara and Richard watched him go. "He's going to be okay," Richard said. "He's going to be great." They walked back to the car. Richard opened Amara's door, then stopped. "What?" she asked. "Ethan told me I should give you flowers and chocolate. He said you like chocolate." "That kid is too smart for his own good." "Is he right? Do you like chocolate?" "I love chocolate." "Then maybe I should take you to dinner sometime, somewhere nice, with chocolate dessert." Amara's heart stuttered. "Richard, are you asking me on a date?" I'm asking if you'd consider letting me try to be something more than Ethan's father, something more than your co-parent. I'm asking if maybe possibly you'd be open to, yes, 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 I'd love to have dinner with you, and chocolate dessert, and whatever else you're too nervous to ask for. Richard laughed, relief flooding his face. I thought you'd say it was too complicated, that we should keep things simple for Ethan. Richard, we gave each other organs. I think we're past simple. They went to dinner the next week, a small Italian restaurant where nobody knew who they were. They talked about everything and nothing. About Ethan, yes, but also about themselves. Their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Richard told her about Sarah, about the guilt he still carried. Amara told him about Trinidad, about leaving her family to find a better life. Do you regret coming here? He asked. Not for 1 second. Because if I hadn't, I never would have met Ethan. And he changed everything. He changed me too. But you changed me more. They started dating slowly, carefully aware that Ethan was watching. They held hands at the park. They went to movies after he was asleep. They kissed for the first time in the kitchen at midnight, and it felt like coming home. Ethan noticed, of course. He noticed everything. Are you and Daddy in love? He asked Amara one morning. Would that be okay if we were? I think so. But you have to promise you'll still be my mommy. Always. That never changes. No matter what happens with your daddy and me, I'll always be your mommy. Okay, then you can be in love. But you have to let me be the ring bearer at the wedding. Amara laughed. Who said anything about a wedding? Daddy did. He practices asking you in the mirror. I heard him. That night, Amara confronted Richard. Ethan says you practice proposals in the mirror. Richard went red. That kid can't keep a secret. Is it true? Maybe. Is that crazy? Richard, we've been dating for 3 months. I know. But I've loved you for longer. I just didn't know how to say it. And I'm still not sure I know how. But Ethan's right. I want to marry you. Not because it makes sense, or because society expects it, but because when I think about the rest of my life, I can't imagine it without you. You saved my son. But you also saved me. You taught me how to love, how to be present, how to put someone else first. And I want to spend every day showing you that I learned the lesson. So yes, I practice in the mirror. Because I'm terrified you'll say no. Amara's eyes filled with tears. You're an idiot. Is that a no? It's a, you should have just asked me instead of asking your reflection, because the answer is yes. It's always been yes. Richard pulled out a ring he'd been carrying in his pocket for 2 weeks. It wasn't massive or showy, just a simple band with a small diamond. But it was perfect. Amara Marie Baptiste Hale, will you marry me? Yes. 1,000 times, yes. They told Ethan the next morning. He screamed so loud the neighbors probably called the police. Then he insisted on calling everyone he knew to tell them he was going to have 2 parents who love each other and him. They got married 6 months later in the mansion garden where Ethan had asked if he was going to live. It was small, just family and close friends. Ethan was the ring bearer exactly as he'd demanded. Cook made the cake chocolate with strawberries. The gardener made sure every flower was perfect. When the minister asked if anyone objected, Ethan raised his hand. I object to anyone who thinks this is weird, because it's not weird, it's perfect. Everyone laughed. The ceremony continued, and when Richard and Amara kissed, Ethan cheered louder than anyone. 1 year after the transplant, they went back to the hospital for a celebration. Dr. Chen had organized a donor appreciation event, and she'd asked Amara to speak, to tell her story, to inspire other potential donors. Amara stood in front of a room full of doctors and nurses and families and donors and recipients. Ethan sat in the front row holding Richard's hand, looking at her with absolute adoration. "A year ago," she began, "a little boy asked me if he was going to live, and I didn't know the answer. All I knew was that I loved him enough to try anything. So I got tested, and I was a match. And people told me I was crazy. They said I was being coerced. They said I didn't understand the risks. But I did understand. I understood that sometimes love requires everything. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is give a piece of yourself to someone who needs it more. I'm not a hero. I'm just a mother who couldn't stand by and watch her child die when I had the power to save him. And if I had to do it again, I wouldn't change a single thing. Because that little boy in the front row, he's alive. He's healthy. He's happy. And that's all that matters." The room erupted in applause. But Amara only saw Ethan, who'd climbed out of his seat and was running toward her, arms outstretched. "Mommy, you did so good." She caught him, careful of her scar, careful of his. They held each other, two people connected by more than blood. Connected by choice, by sacrifice, by love that was fiercer than any biological bond. Richard joined them on stage. He wrapped his arms around both of them. And for one perfect moment, they were just a family. Not a billionaire and a maid and a sick child. Just three people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to be light. That night, back at home, Ethan asked Amara to read him a story before bed. "Which one?" "The one about the lonely monster." "Again, you've heard it 100 times." "I know, but it's my favorite, because the monster isn't lonely anymore. He found someone who wasn't scared of him." Amara read the story, doing all the voices, making Ethan laugh. When she finished, he looked at her with those eyes that were his mother's, but also his own. "Mommy, can I ask you something?" "Anything?" "Do you think your liver knows it's in me? Like, does it know it moved?" Amara smiled. "I think it knows. And I think it's happy. Because it gets to keep you alive. I'm happy too, because now I'm really going to live right. Yes, my love, you're really going to live. You're going to grow up and go to college and fall in love and have adventures and do amazing things. And your daddy and I are going to be there for all of it. Promise. Promise." Ethan fell asleep with a smile on his face. Amara stayed in the chair by his bed, watching him breathe, marveling at the miracle of his existence. This child who wasn't hers by blood, but was hers in every way that mattered. This child she'd literally given a piece of herself to save. Richard appeared in the doorway. "You okay?" "Better than okay? I'm perfect." He sat beside her, and they watched their son sleep together. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "The sacrifice, the surgery, the pain?" "Not for 1 second. Do you know why?" "Why?" "Because love isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be worth it. And he's worth everything." Richard took her hand, and they sat in the quiet room with the paper airplanes on the ceiling, and the drawings on the walls, and the sound of a child breathing easily, peacefully, because two people had loved him enough to do the impossible. And somewhere in that moment, in that perfect, ordinary, extraordinary moment, they understood what most people spend their whole lives searching for. That family isn't defined by DNA or legal documents or social expectations. It's defined by showing up. By saying yes when everyone else says no. By giving everything you have when someone you love needs it more. That's what makes a mother. That's what makes a family. That's what makes life worth living. Not the big moments. Not the dramatic gestures. But the quiet nights when everyone you love is breathing safely under the same roof. When the hard part is over and the healing has begun. When you realize that the greatest adventure isn't climbing mountains or crossing oceans. It's choosing to love someone so completely that you'd give them your own body to save theirs. And then waking up afterward and realizing you'd do it all over again without hesitation. Because that's what love is. Not a feeling, not a promise, but an action, a choice, a piece of yourself given freely to someone who makes your world make sense. And as Amara sat there watching Ethan sleep, feeling Richard's hand in hers, she knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice, that she'd keep making it every day for the rest of her life. Because some promises don't require words. They require blood and sacrifice and courage. And some families aren't born, they're built, one impossible choice at a time.